What are phrasal verbs? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the world of phrasal verbs, a topic that can be tricky, even for experienced English learners. But don't worry, I'll break it down and make it easy to follow. So, what exactly is a phrasal verb? It's when a verb combines with one or more particles, like prepositions or adverbs, to create a new meaning. Often, the new meaning isn't clear from just looking at the original verb, which is why learning these can be so challenging. In this video, I'll cover the types of phrasal verbs, some commonly used examples, and tips on how to practice and remember them. Types of phrasal verbs. Let's start with the basics, the types of phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs fall into three main categories: separable phrasal verbs. Some phrasal verbs allow you to put the object between the verb and the particle. For instance, with pick up, you can say, pick up the phone or pick the phone up. This flexibility can help emphasize different parts of a sentence, but not all phrasal verbs work this way. Inseparable phrasal verbs. Then we have inseparable phrasal verbs, where the verb and particle have to stay together. For example, run into and I ran into an old friend can't be split, three-part phrasal verbs. Lastly, some phrasal verbs have two particles, like keep up with. Here, the phrase always stays together. It's hard to keep up with current events these days. Common examples, common phrasal verbs and their meanings. Now that we know the types, let's look at some common phrasal verbs you'll hear in everyday conversations. I'll share examples to help you see how each one is used. 1. Look up. To search for information. If you want to learn a new word, you can look it up in the dictionary. This phrase means searching for information. 2. Run into. To meet unexpectedly. I ran into my old teacher at the grocery store. This means you met by chance, not because you planned to. 3. Take off. To remove something or for planes, to leave the ground. In two different sentences. Please take off your shoes before entering and the plane will take off in a few minutes. You can see how this phrasal verb has more than one meaning depending on the context. 4. Break down. For a machine to stop working, imagine you're on your way to work and suddenly your car breaks down. Here, it means the car has stopped working. 5. Look forward to anticipate with pleasure. This phrase is great for expressing excitement. I'm really looking forward to our trip next month. Use in real life. As you can see, phrasal verbs pop up everywhere in English, and mastering them can make you sound more natural. But remember, context is key with phrasal verbs, as the same phrase can have different meanings based on the situation. Common mistakes to avoid. Before we wrap up, let's cover a few common mistakes people make with phrasal verbs. Confusing similar phrasal verbs. Some phrasal verbs sound similar but have different meanings. For instance, pick up and take up. Pick up can mean to lift or learn something quickly, while take up means to start a new activity. Mixing these up can lead to misunderstandings, using phrasal verbs incorrectly in formal writing. Phrasal verbs are common in spoken English, but in formal writing, they can sound too casual. Instead of saying bring up an issue, you might write raise an issue in a report or essay. Practice tips, tips to practice and final thoughts. So, how can you get better at using phrasal verbs? Here are a few practice tips. Create sample sentences. Whenever you learn a new phrasal verb, try creating your own sentences with it. This will help cement the meaning in your mind. Use apps and vocabulary journals. There are some great apps designed for English learners that can help you practice. Or, you can keep a journal specifically for phrasal verbs, noting their definitions and sample sentences you come up with. Practice with native speakers. If you have the chance, practicing with native speakers can really help. Phrasal verbs are used constantly in daily conversations, and the more you hear them, the easier it will be to remember them. Recap. To sum it all up, mastering phrasal verbs can give you a huge boost in understanding and speaking natural English. Today, we covered what phrasal verbs are, the main types, some commonly used examples, and how to avoid common mistakes. Keep practicing, and remember, like any language skill, it takes time. Subscribe and check out more videos on English tips. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with any other topics you'd like to learn about. See you in the next video.